Robert Vaughn. We'll have a little bit of our wires crossed at the beginning, but we're here once again to talk about the importance of voting in the Georgia election, the runoffs. As always, we find out when Black people vote, it impacts elections in a very positive way. So it's incumbent upon everybody, no matter what you're doing, not only to vote, but to get some, make sure somebody else gets out and vote. That's why there's so much work going and money, special interest going into trying to suppress our vote in a number of different ways. So, in spite of what you hear from friends or relatives or whomever, get out there and make your vote count, make your voice heard, stay active, stay involved, stay engaged. Mike?
Well, first and foremost is that uh, the impact of the vote should have been felt by everybody this last election. Of course, Donald Trump got spanked with it, and he's feeling the impact of it. That's why he say he won't leave the White House, and just for a Republican and what he's done and his guys that his people that's following him that are in the Senate, in Congress, they should actually be voted out because Donald Trump has turned the America upside down, shook all the money out of the pockets, and he's outside picking it up. The whole thing is that these people have done some things to us as people. I'm talking about white people, black people, Chinese people. We don't care. We are Americans. We all are Americans. And if they feel that only a certain amount of American, certain segment, the 1%ers, the people who are Republicans are the only ones that should benefit by the American or the American dream. Man, the American dream for us has been a nightmare. It has been a nightmare. We trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, trying to, put sense in this. We quarantine. We're in a
Yeah. Well, one stat that really kind of really got my attention was that you have three people in this country that own half of everything. They own half of the stock market, which means they own half of the companies. Three people own half of everything. And if we continue to see this concentration of wealth, pretty soon we'll probably have two people that own half everything. And, one of the problems with capitalism is that it concentrates wealth. It does away with the middle class. And without the middle class, if you don't have a middle class, you don't have anybody to purchase the goods and services that the business owners create, you know.
yeah.
And this is why, we decided again, people say, well, what does that have to do with the Georgia elections? Well, we wanted to cover Georgia elections because it's probably could be more important than a presidential election because the Senate is it's the Senate, who's going to run the Senate, who's going to rule the Senate, is really at stake. And although the House of Representatives is responsible for spending money, they can come up with a bill, like they did the COVID relief bill that's been sitting around for 8 months. But if the Senate doesn't approve it, and move it forward, then it goes nowhere. So we have two seats in the Senate, which would give us a 50-50 tie between Democrats and Republicans. You have some independents, but they typically caucus and vote with the Democrats. And when there's a tie in the Senate, the vice president would cast a tie-breaking vote. If it were to happen now, it would be Mike Pence. He's the vice president. But after January 20th, Kamala Harris would cast the tie-breaking vote. And this is only if we win both Georgia seats. If both Georgia seats go to the Democrats, then Biden will be able to get his agenda, move his agenda forward. And so this is why, the two, so I had somebody ask me, says, Georgia, why do you spend so much time on the Senate seats in Georgia? Well, this is why the Senate seats in Georgia are so important, because the Senate seats in Georgia determine whether there might be another COVID relief bill. It determines, who's going to sit on the Supreme Court. It determines if the Voter Rights Act gets reinstated. I mean, and it determines whether you're going to continue to have gerrymandering. So the Georgia Senate race is probably the most important Senate race that I can ever remember.
Okay.
I haven't seen all of them, but it's pretty important. It'll determine not just the direction of this country, but the direction that the world's going to go in, because although we lost a lot of cool points in terms of international leaders being international leaders, we can get that back with Biden. And what goes on in America, what Americans do, typically a lot of the world follows suit. And Mike, why don't you speak a little bit about some of the implications of maybe not voting?
Well, the thing is that if you don't vote, you'll get, a clog in the system, meaning that, this COVID bill was on the table, and it was like $1 trillion, take $2 or $3 trillion, and the Republicans say no. We're not giving the minorities and poor people anything. We want to give the big businesses the breaks because those are the people that employ people. But you have a lot of small businesses that are going out of business because the whole city shut down. There's no money to be made. Now, if we don't vote, this is just as important as it was to get Donald Trump out of there, to get these 2 seats done. Not 1 seat, but both of them. We need both of these seats because things will run a lot smoother. They'll run smoother because when it comes up, our thing was we didn't support, Obama like, President Obama like we were supposed to. We didn't know. We didn't know the type of trouble that President Obama was having with pushing things through. We didn't know that. The media kept, because, a lot of the media is owned by Republicans. They wouldn't tell us. I hope that Biden becomes real transparent. Let us know, let us deal with it. Let us vote these people out of here that's giving them trouble, because we need these votes. We need these chairs for things to go smooth. And if they don't vote, just the other day I read an article that the Republicans are basically, they kind of scared because most of the people, the registered voters, through the efforts of Stacey Abrams and a lot of other organizations down there that have registered people, and they're into the minority communities, and they are people of color who have registered to vote, and they're saying, hey, they're now doing phone calls and everything to get the Republicans out. But the more Democrats that we have going out, because there's going to be some Democrats some Republicans that do not agree with Donald Trump that's going to vote Democrat. So we have to make sure that we have our family, our friends, our relatives, hell, our enemies. Just give them a call and tell them, hey man, I know we enemies, but go vote because things will be better. I promise.
Yeah, Veros, what are some of the other implications of not voting, of apathy, voter apathy, and not voting? Because when people don't vote, they can give you every excuse in the world why they didn't vote. But what are some of the implications? So people who
one of the biggest,
get a better idea.
One of the biggest things a lot of people, don't focus on is that there's a lot of money up for grabs, and I'm talking with regard to contracts for not just money and programs like say for COVID things like that, but big contracts that go to different companies and what have you. So we have to if we're going to control this money, or I should say, get our share, because you can't have community economic independence without an economic base. And that's one of the things that has squeezed us out for so long. So it's important. Looking forward, if we're going to leave anything for the children or any kind of generational wealth that'll make a difference in people's lives, so that we can really move forward. Because historically, in the past, we've always had to start at zero. If somebody can leave some money to their family or somebody to start a business, buy homes, education, all these things, that gets us out of that poverty cycle. But when we're always kicked back to square one, then we're gonna have some major problems. I mean, there's other things they're talking about women's rights and abortion rights, things like that. And I mean, those are controversial on both sides, but still, we got to get some financial resources if we are ever going to make a difference. Even with regard to moving our candidates forward.
Yep.
So I think that's
Yeah.
good.
I can think of another implication of not voting is the Voting Rights Act has sort of been ripped to shreds.
Right.
And that's why you have in some African American communities and communities of color, where you have people waiting in line 4 to 5 hours to vote, and you can go on the other side of town and walk right in and vote and walk right out. So, because there has been so much gerrymandering at the state level, you have a state like Ohio, which is 55% Democratic, but the Republicans control 2/3 of the House seats because of the way the districts are drawn. And this is something that is a direct result of people not voting.
It's designed like that by them.
Yeah, it's designed like that. Yeah. Matter of fact, the guy that designed it, he passed away. And the reason they found out that he designed it like that is because his daughter got his hard drive and turned it over to the San Francisco Examiner, I believe, or one of the
Wow.
newspapers, or the Mercury, San Jose Mercury News, one of the newspapers she turned over. And this was a systematic plan, on, how to gerrymander districts so you could have a majority Democratic population, but you can ensure that Republicans will control state house seats.
Hey, Robert,
So,
see,
yeah. Mhm.
see this is a great point, because just in Georgia, they had all these polling places and reduced them down to 3 in the black neighborhood, reduced them down to 3 places.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
but let me tell you, they're voting right now and they're standing in line to vote. And that's a beautiful thing,
Right.
because see, we need both of those seats.
Yep. In Texas, they got rid of I think 70 or 75% of the voting precincts, mostly in communities of color.
See, hey, Robert, right there. That is, we've been seeing. How long have we been seeing this? I mean, you remember when we voted for Obama? How long we stood
But
in
see,
line?
they couldn't do this. The only way they did this is they start chipping away at the Voting Rights Act. See, this gerrymandering the state districts, getting justices appointed with predetermined outcomes in the court, not necessarily Supreme Court, but a lot of the lower courts. They've
Right.
gotten people appointed, and they've actually been kind of chipping away at the Voting Rights Act for a long time. It used to be if you wanted to make a change that would affect and disenfranchise people, you had to get it approved through the federal government. You had to get it approved through the Office of Civil Rights to make sure it didn't disproportionately impact people of color. Well, see, they got rid of that provision and they've steadily been chipping away at it. So now it basically doesn't have the teeth that it used to have. So one of the first things I think I would like to see Biden do, and I think he'll probably pay attention to this if he is successful in taking the Senate, is to kind of get the Voting Rights Act back the way it should be. Right. So individual states cannot gerrymander districts. So you have a majority that's how, the electoral college is the same way. That's how you can have somebody win the popular vote, but lose an electoral college. Or you can have somebody in a state have 55% support, but lose because, the districts are 2/3 of the party in power because of the way they've been gerrymandered. I mean, I think Marcy Kaptur, somebody has a district in Northern Ohio that runs from like Toledo all the way to Conneaut. It runs along the lakeshore. It's about 2 inches wide and about, a couple 100 miles long. And see, that's ridiculous, man. Districts should be drawn fairly, equally, and geometrically and geographically as equal as you can make them. You know,
Right.
and that's what. And when you start gerrymandering, we'll say, you know, well, Mike has, you know, 60% supporters, but if we take 30% of Mike's supporters and put them in Verl's district and take 30% of Verl's supporters and put them in my district, then I'll be guaranteed to have a seat. And then,
Hey, let me ask you a question, Robert.
yeah.
Do you think drawing these districts, and this for you too, Mike, drawing these districts should have to do with land mass or population?
Well, they should have to do with population,
Right.
just like the way the congressional
I
seats are
agree.
apportioned. It's based
agree
on
with you.
population. That's why certain people in the government don't want to count Mexican Americans. They don't want to count Mexican Americans because they don't want to count undocumented Americans because they believe that might give them too much
Change
power
the
in
outcome.
Congress. Yeah, too much power in Congress. And I'll tell you something else that they'll probably look at. I mean, there's a lot of things. This system has been the way it is for a long time. And there's probably a lot of things that you probably see changing in the future. For instance, I think that the Senate, why should a state like Montana, who probably doesn't have as many people as Cleveland, Ohio,
Right.
have 2 senators, and then a state like Texas, with 50 million people, have 2 senators? That's
Right.
not proportional representation.
You know, as it was explained to me one time, they were saying that they don't always want like the biggest to win. You know, like let's say Texas or New York.
Mhm.
They want it to represent all the people, but still, if you're like a big state like you were saying, Montana,
Mhm.
and you've only got like
Mhm.
200, 300,000 people, whatever it is, you know,
Yeah.
small number for a big area.
Yeah.
I mean, what do? You know?
But you know what happened is the senators in those states that don't have big populations are the ones that pretty much run Congress now.
Isn't
Right.
that crazy?
How many people are in Kentucky? The most powerful man in Congress is from Kentucky.
Yeah, and he's
It's-
making decisions that affect billions of people all over the country.
And people were saying, well, how did he get reelected? People voted for him, or either people didn't vote. And so the people that,
Or either there was some finagling going on. Because one thing we know for sure,
Mhm.
the people in power have no intention of giving it up easily.
they
They are
never
fighting
do,
tooth
man.
and nail, dirty tricks, anything they can do.
That-
You don't,
Go ahead.
Talk about
If-
dirty.
you don't
you know,
take, I tell you what I heard an armed robber say in this movie once. He said, man, you stole this money from the Don, you know? He said, you got to give this money back. You know what he said? So you don't take something to give it back, man. Same
Right.
thing with power. You don't take power and seize
Right.
power to give it back. The only way you get power is if you have to take it back. You know,
Hey,
and that's through
you
the
know-
ballot box, you know? So
Go ahead, Mike.
I don't know if you guys have kept up with the news this week that where the guy, I mean, we talk about dirty tricks and underhandedness, where they thought this guy, he had 750,000 votes in his ballots in his truck. And some rich Republican had paid like 20 people to look over the election, which in a state of Texas, which Trump won. And they got this guy, ran him down, hit him with the car, took it, held him at gunpoint and everything. And the guy was paid $266,000, to overlook the election and stuff for, I said, you got these, rich Republicans.
but
And
you
they
know
got-
the guy that they ran down, they were following.
He was an HBC guy.
Yeah, he was the air conditioning guy.
Right.
He wasn't even a guy.
HVAC.
They concocted this story so they could get their money, so they could get that 400 grand. They said, "Yeah, we know the guy. We'll find your guy." And they just made up the story so they could get paid.
Right.
basically.
Basically.
They made this guy into some kind of, the
So
guy was-
basically, they gave him 260,000 reasons why he should work with
But
them.
did you see the rich guy, who they interviewed at the same, after they got him? And he was talking about, y'all just don't know. It's fraud. And we I'm just like, man, President-elect Biden said, I won Georgia 3 times.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
you know,
one thing I give Biden credit for, he does have a very diverse cabinet. But
Yeah, man, that's
the question is, after January 20th, is he gonna make good on his promises? And that's what we gotta.
I'll tell you something, and what you probably already know. No politician ever makes good on all his promises. That's just like if you ever run for office and you lose, and then you think to yourself, well, how could I lose? Because everybody said they voted for me. You know, no politician can possibly ever make good on all his promises.
Right.
I think what they can do is maybe move things in the right direction.
make a list. Make a list. If I did this, I didn't do this. I did this. I didn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah, you got a point, because when the Republicans, like when Obama was elected, and the Republicans had a pact not to pass one piece of legislation he put forth.
Right.
To me, that was treasonous. These people are in office to advance the country forward, but they didn't care if it was going to help the country or not. They just didn't want him to have a legacy.
Right. You got to understand, where's Mitch McConnell from? Where he from?
Kentucky. KY. He's well, here again, you have a guy from a state that's not a popular state.
Right.
That's pretty much calling all the shots. And
the guy from Utah.
Yeah, So I think eventually the system will have to be updated. I think that the Electoral College is just, to me, it's just it was designed at a time when people like us weren't allowed to vote.
Right.
And it was designed so that you had to be a landowner, you had to be white, and you had to be male to vote.
Right. Absolutely.
And it was created so nobody that wasn't like that could gain power.
If you remember, they just celebrated this year 100 years of women voting, when the suffragettes and women's votes, they couldn't vote up until 100 years ago. But even when they voted, when they got the right to vote, it didn't include our Black women. It just included white women.
It's amazing. Now Black women seem to be, entering center stage and making a big difference. Or Black women and women of color. Even one cabinet member, I understand, is Native American. So that's a first too.
That's good, because I'm part Native American also. I was part of the Cherokee tribe. My family's part of the Cherokee tribe down in Alabama, where they had the Creek Indians. My family is part Creek, part of the Creek Indians.
Right.
So being Native American or having Native American blood, and I would tell people, I said, they treat us awful, but they treat Native Americans even worse. So they're and the thing is that we don't get a chance to talk to them and to unify with them, because like I said, they put them on reservations, then they have their own leadership, and they do that's how they, when they started, because they were really poor, and the way that they really treated up until they started doing the casino thing.
Yeah, right. I agree with you. And you know what? There are some Indian groups in Cleveland, like the one that has been fighting for so long.
Native American groups.
Yeah, Native American. Correction. I guess I was saying it because I'm talking about the Cleveland Indians also. The Native American groups fought to get that Chief Wahoo logo and that name changed. And now we see, after all this fighting, and that's been going on for years, it's coming about.
They finally did it. They finally did it.
Yeah. Well, see, I think that goes back to, what's a racial slur? Like if it's offensive to you, then that's offensive to you, and it's not up to me to say what name is offensive to you.
Right.
Well, just this year, I found out that the Native Americans in Alaska, they don't like to be called Eskimos. That's offensive to them.
Yeah, it is.
They got different tribes. I forget the name of the tribes. And
Inuit, I think they prefer.
Right, the Inuits, and they want to be, because the company made the Eskimo pie, and they decided to change their name because it was offensive to the native. Although, you know, we bought in Seward's Folly, we bought Alaska from Russia. That was all part of Russia, and we bought that.
That's
But
'cause we
see,
knew we knew there was oil there.
right?
And Russia didn't, and they never forgiven us for it.
Well,
And some people, I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that the reason they sold it to us is because we gave them information on how to make nuclear weapons.
It wouldn't surprise me, man. Nothing
That was
surprises
part
me.
of the deal because it doesn't seem like a good deal for them. I mean, but you know, it wasn't. I guess at one time, you know, you could just walk right across from Alaska to Russia. So you know, it wasn't part of their continent anymore. So I think it kind of made sense from their point of view. But I'm sure if they'd known that there was oil there, they probably wouldn't have given it up so easily.
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
sure.
because the Americans knew that that Russia had oil too on that tundra, but Russia didn't have the technology to get it out. But they're producing oil now because I think it's the Koreans or the Chinese or somebody went up there and built this big station,
Yeah.
and they have like it's like being on the moon somewhere. They make their own. They got their own atmosphere inside of it and everything. And because when they built it, they took parts of it up the river, up the Pacific Ocean. They went up the Pacific, and they were sending parts up there, and just built the thing. And then,
But you know who really helped Stalin develop the Russian oil industry?
Mhm.
Was Charles Koch's father.
Okay,
And coincidentally, he was also the founder of the John Birch Society.
right.
Their
Another
father,
race.
and that's how initially they made up their initial billions, because their father was good friends with Stalin and helped him develop his oil industry. And he also developed. He was kind of like the father of the secret police. You know, that was like a Stalin thing.
There-
In fact, I just got a thing on social media the other day saying that don't buy Chanel because Chanel was a Nazi, and they had it all broke down to say, well, okay, Chanel now, Chanel,
Well,
no, because but
yeah.
a lot of these people, who are rich and famous, who they were of dubious character and stuff.
Yeah, they were all. I mean, they were. That was a time when there's always been crooks, and I think it was just
Right.
100 years ago, it was a whole lot easier to be a crook than it is now.
Well, this country was founded by
You didn't
Well,
have
they're
all
more
the technology
sophisticated
and,
now.
and all the
this country was founded by criminals.
yeah. I mean, it was.
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly, Mike. And
you
when
go
you
back
think
now-
about it, even the Kennedy's father, he was involved in all kinds of things with the mob and what have you.
Mhm.
And so,
Okay. And you
everybody
might
tries
ask
to get there.
yourself-
I'm
you might
sorry.
ask yourself what this has to do with Georgia.
Okay, well, see, in Georgia, we talking about rich people. Rich and powerful people, Warren off. Why would she even want to be, in there? Because except for making deals, because see, she rich. She don't understand what it means to be poor. She don't know.
Her husband owns a stock exchange.
Yeah. But see, the thing is, that's what I'm saying. Let her go home and play footsie with her husband. And I said footsie.
But see, they made a lot of money. Purdue and Kelly Loeffler were doing insider trading like it was going out of style. I
Yeah.
mean, when they were in the meetings with Trump and the inner circle, when they knew how bad that this virus was going to be. Well, the
Right.
first thing they did was, they say that Purdue, he didn't even wait till the meeting was over. He went to use the bathroom and got on the phone to his stockbroker and said, sell this and buy Moderna. One of the reasons I think that they haven't really delivered all the Pfizer vaccine is because, a lot of our leaders have stock in Moderna. And
Well, see, the one thing I was saying is
want the
that-
United States to buy more of that than the Pfizer vaccine.
Well, what I'm saying is with the Warnoff war against him, they were saying, well, he says, well, like left from them, they don't know nothing about, being poor. But here's a guy who grew up and did what he was supposed to do, and,
Mhm.
and he's a minister, and they trying to turn his words against him, where he said that with the military, it said, you can't serve God in the military. But see, in the Bible and in other places, it said you can't serve two guys. You can't serve two guys. You can't serve two masters. And that's what he said. So, they went and turned that around and told that the military wasn't this and that, and trying to get people to
They said he didn't like the military. But see, this is the only card that they have to play.
right.
Is to play the race card. That's the only, because they can't. Kelly
it.
Loeffler has never done anything in her life. She just got appointed to be a senator. Purdue trades more stock. He trades stock on the committees that have oversight on the companies that he has stock in. Now, if that's not crooked, I don't know what is. And
Well,
That's about as crooked as you can get.
that's about as crooked as you can get. And I think what we're going to see eventually, you might see some type of crimes commission, or like a presidential crimes commission. A lot of people are pushing for that because a lot of things that people did, while you were hating on this person, and while people were hating Black Lives Matter, and some other people were hating the Proud Boys, that was fine with them because they could steal all the money they wanted. Nobody would pay attention
right. Because
because you
they
were
made a
thinking about
diversion.
something else. It's just
They
like,
made a diversion.
yeah, I had a friend when I was younger. You may have known him, James Dillard, and he used to do
Yeah.
magic. He used to do magic for years. And he would always say, he said, the reason the magic works is because of diversion. He said, you get somebody looking at something over here, and then you do something over here, and they never see it.
I never knew James was in the Magic. I knew him. Yeah,
He
good
did
football player. I
magic
remember.
tricks in like 5th and 6th grade, man. He would do these.
Oh, okay.
And he always said the only way magic works is because there's a diversion. The same thing happens with a lot of things they were doing. See, this stuff never came to light until people started looking at it because they were too caught up on everything else that was going on. There was a lot of stuff that went on this summer.
Right.
George Floyd, you had the people dying of the virus. Like, now they're saying that, the Trump government, wanted people to catch the virus. They said, let's try herd immunity, and we want them to catch it. So, now somebody said today, well, maybe that's why they never got tests out.
Trump doesn't seem too worried about it. One thing with regard to that virus, I heard also was that they weren't requiring the military to take the shot, the vaccine. And I thought that was pretty interesting since they're pushing the vaccine on everybody else. That came out the other day. And see, that goes back to what we were saying, the presidential election, what happens in Georgia, what happens in the Senate, all these things are connected,
And I
So
think
Georgia will influence a lot in the Congress, and
the United
I'm
States
sure that'll have a big influence on how effective Biden and
And the
his
world.
cabinet can be.
and the world, it affects things that go on in the world.
Sure.
Right. Because see, that's what I'm saying. When it comes down to the vote,
Mhm.
and we're not saying that they're going to vote on everything that Biden does, because you still have a conscience. You got to vote your conscience. If something comes up that they don't like, they're supposed to not support it,
Right.
whether they're Democrats or Republicans. But see, the Republicans have held up the relief bill for what, 8 months?
Mhm.
And the pieces that they got, because number one, they didn't want to send people more stimulus checks because here it is, with the Republican values, they talk about socialism. We taking care of people. People don't have to work. Man, people want to work. You got to understand that people want to work. Y'all held them up. Y'all got jobs. Your family got health care.
Mhm.
Our family, because remember,
One of the arguments.
when Donald Trump, wait a minute, wait. When Donald Trump came in, his main policy or mission was to get rid of what? Obamacare.
Right.
That was the main mission, and that's why his Republican followers voted for him, because they figured that minorities and poor people should not have access to the same thing they have. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree to that, and I think
Me too, yeah.
one of what Trump wanted to do. Trump, first of all, he never thought he was going to get elected. And then after he got elected, Jared Kushner and all the people said, look, man, he said, we can bleed this country dry. We can get rich like you wouldn't believe. And that's what they've done. Now they found out yesterday that Jared Kushner had a inauguration fund that was like $1.2 billion, and he siphoned $700 million off and gave it to members of the Trump family.
Right. That's what they're investigating now. I mean,
And
New York got a case going.
The other 600 million, they're trying to figure out what the hell that was spent on, because they didn't spend 600 million on the inauguration. So there's probably $1 billion that's missing that nobody can really account for. But like you say, though, it's they're gonna dig and they're gonna find it, but they've used the United States government like their personal piggy bank. There was I think it was 2 years ago when they blockaded Qatar. I think they blockaded Qatar for no apparent reason, where no ships could go in or out. And then I guess Qatar made $100 million donation to Ivanka Trump's nonprofit, and all of a sudden the blockade was gone.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they
but see,
wanted to make money.
that's what I'm saying about the about the Georgia election.
Mm-hmm.
This is just as important as the other one. And I encourage people to encourage their relatives, their friends, their enemies, everybody else to get out and vote, because you want to see America grow. You want to see some things that really happen, because we've been stagnant for years. And if you notice, it feels better now. Trump is on the way out the door. The atmosphere just feels better. I mean, you got Kamala Harris, you got Biden. They're smiling.
Mm-hmm.
They're smiling, and when they smile, you can feel it. The generosity that they're getting ready to give America a whole nother boost. You can feel it.
I think what Trump was successful in doing, and what a lot of politicians do, is they divide people. And they make this group dislike this group, and they say, well, the reason that you lost your job at Lordstown is because of Mexicans coming across the border and African Americans taking your job. Well, I don't know what those jobs are, like I said before, but the reason that the jobs in Lordstown went away was partly because of the trade embargo, because that General Motors plant, General Motors sells more cars in China than they do in the United States.
China's a bigger market, yeah.
Yeah, when they instituted that trade embargo,
got 1 billion people there.
Yeah, Americans weren't buying Chevy Cruises, which is what they made at Lordstown.
Right,
those cars were going, they were rebranding, they were going to China or going to South Africa. And see, when Trump, got his trade embargo, which I still don't understand what the purpose of it was, to punish certain countries, and he punished this country because a lot of those jobs that were dependent upon trade went away, but people don't like to kind of figure things out sometimes, and they like it easy, like it's all Verl's fault. Yeah, we just get Verl. Everything will be fine, and people want an easy remedy, and it's not always an easy remedy, but the trade embargo had a lot to do with a lot of these places closing, and not just that, it's just that you had a lot of people making a lot of money, but they didn't really reinvest. I mean, Verl, you and I had this conversation probably 20 years ago about how electric vehicles were going to be coming around.
Right.
I mean, it's not like this is a surprise to anybody, but when you get rid of electric vehicles, then they don't need fossil fuel.
That's the thing. And the technology has been around a lot. So much of it has been suppressed and put up on the shelf, because they say the internal combustion engine has really been obsolete for about 30 years.
Yeah.
But, like I say, so many people have so much to lose,
That's like, I know Mazda, remember the rotary engine they had?
Yeah, I remember.
Much more efficient than a
V8. The Wanko engine.
Wanko, yeah. Much more efficient than a V8. but they weren't gonna let that engine, cut the oil profits, and a lot of people make money off oil. I think we talked about this last week, is that most of the oil uh, dollar goes to taxes, county taxes,
Hey,
federal
you just
taxes,
made me think
state
about
taxes,
something.
city taxes.
Robert, you just made me think about something. You know how many people benefit from oil all the way around?
Oh yeah,
So if we got out of the oil business, world globally, that would affect Saudi Arabia and those countries over there. That, but that's also that money is connected to the American dollar, the petrol dollar. Because if you want to buy oil, you got to use American dollars. So if all of a sudden their profits disappeared, the American dollar would be flat. I mean, it is already, but everyone would know. There'd be no air in it at all.
yeah, but that's not likely to happen. I had a history professor in college that said, he said, we talk about the different wars, and how we were talking one day, it was American history, about how America had been at war somewhere 94% of the time since 1776. Since we became a country, we've been at war somewhere, all except for like 20 years or something, you know. And he said, and he was talking about the different. He said, well, you had this war, this war, this war, and then he said in the late 1800s, and then you had what they call the petroleum wars, and how all the wars since the War of 1812 were basically about oil. I said, well, World War
Yeah.
II wasn't about oil. He said, yeah. He said, why do you think we were in Okinawa? You know, he said, why do you think we fought the Germans over Okinawa? He said, we didn't need Okinawa, but I guess the German V-2 bombers needed 138 to 150 octane fuel, which so they needed oil, and they had that was their oil supply that got cut off. And he said, and that kind of like changed the direction of the war. He said the same thing. After World War II, they had the Marshall Plan. It was all about oil, where they took, Iraq. They took a little section of Iraq where it was a lot of the oil, most of the oil came from, and they said, we're going to call this Kuwait, and we're going to put this guy in charge. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
Kuwait.
generally,
until
just
World War
slice
II
a
was
little
part
piece
of
of Saudi
Iraq.
Arabia off.
Yeah, so they cut
But the other
off
part of that, was that originally, you remember, it was Arabia,
Mhm.
but with the help of the British, the Saudi family,
Saudi family.
took over an entire country and
Yeah,
named it after themselves, Saudi Arabia.
that's right.
That's
And they,
insane,
and they cut a deal with BP.
right?
Uh, the Kuwait cut a deal with BP that they would keep all their money in the bank in the UK,
Yeah, and that convenient.
and they would let BP have a shot at that oil for so many years. But and everything was, when Russia was fighting for Ukraine, Azerbaijan. That's about oil and resources, man. It's about oil and resources. When
And
we
now
don't,
the biggest prize on the planet is Africa and coltan and all those very rare minerals that go into satellites and the
right, right,
TVs and the cell phones. So the Chinese, they're over there. They're building cities and everything, taking over.
yeah, but they're
And
kind of,
these countries that they've made these loans to can't pay the loan back. So the Chinese just say, just give us some land.
but you
Just
know
give
what
us
they're
some
gonna
land.
do? They're gonna
The
nationalize.
Arabs are there too. Remember?
Yeah,
Yeah.
They're
everybody's
doing
there.
they're doing that ethnic cleansing. They're killing people over trying to take their land. I think in
Yeah.
Mozambique or someplace
Yep,
like
yep,
that.
yep, yep, yeah. And fortunately, South Africa is part of NATO. So I don't know if I should say this, but I guess they still have some nuclear weapons down there. Just like Turkey's got, Trump got pissed off at Turkey and said, hey, wait a minute, man. We got like 60 to 80 nuclear weapons on the
Right.
Turkish airfield. You sure we want to piss them off?
Well, that's the interesting thing too. Whoever's in that nuclear club, they get a little more respect than say somebody who's not.
Yeah.
Because you never
But
know who's going to start throwing those bombs around.
that's why North Korea is still in existence, man. If
Oh
Libya,
yeah,
if Libya had pursued their nuclear weapons, Gaddafi would still be here.
oh yeah, without question.
Now you can argue if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but one thing I noticed, I was talking to a buddy of mine he's a cop, and he said, one thing he notices now that I say, well, it seems like a lot of conflict this summer. He said, yeah, well, this summer, yeah. He said, but previous to the summer, and he said most of that's because of the COVID brain, what he calls the COVID syndrome. People are locked up and they're just kind of flipping out. They're broke, hungry, But he said before the summer, he said, you actually saw a lot of conflict go down. And I said, why was that? He said, because in Ohio, just about everybody you run into, you may have a gun, but they probably got one too. It's kind of like the old West, where you kind of like
Very much so, yeah.
you weren't the only one in the bar, with a gun. He told me that this happened. Was it last summer? I think, where he got a call on the West off of Detroit, where two guys were killed, and they got kicked out of a party, and so they went back with guns and were going to rob everybody at the party. Well, it was 10 people. It was 11 people in the party, and 10 of them had guns, and they killed those two guys.
Mm. Hey, that happened recently in a church too. Do you remember this guy flipped out in his church and he was shooting people, and one of the deacons had a gun, and calm that stuff down.
So it's that whole that whole oil thing, man, and it's funny how an election that happens in Georgia can affect what goes on in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
But
that is crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy.
That's the thing. In this global community, everything is connected.
Everything's connected. Yeah. I mean, the Black Lives Matter movement, which I tend to view as a movement against oppression. And the haves and the have-nots, and it's gotten to the point, every so often you get to the point where the have-nots are tired of not having anything. And so But
see, now they instituted this medical martial law via COVID. I mean, I believe COVID is there, but I don't think it's as bad as they're saying it is. But if you just watch the, talking heads on the news every night, it's crazy. I heard a couple of pundits the other day. These guys were on NPR. But this guy was saying, the stock market is doing great right now in spite of everything. And, all these companies are coming back up. But they said, but jobs haven't come back. And he says, well, when do you think jobs will come back? He says, maybe in about 2024. Can people wait till 2024?
Mike, you want to answer that one? I don't know.
Well, see, the thing is, bro, it is worse it's worse than what it is. You say it's not as bad, bro. It's because see, we talked about this before with the 6 degrees of separation. The more people that they find that has the COVID, the more people they're going to find, because this person knows this person, been around this person, and they come back and say, it's from 3 to 6 times worse than what the numbers are.
That's right.
Believe me.
I believe
you. But I'm not seeing these emergency rooms clogged up as they're saying on TV. And then the fact that they were saying the military did not have to take that vaccine, that's saying something to me if I'm reading between the lines.
That's what they're saying, but for all we know, the military could have gotten it already.
Right.
That's what they're saying.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't
know. But see, this go back to Georgia, what I'm saying as far as, transparency and stuff. When you were talking about the Black Lives Matter, and I talk, I listened to Kelly Loeffler, and the thing that she does not believe is that there's really no police brutality, that Black lives, matter is just some kind of crazy thing. But man, they don't live that. They don't live in our hood. They don't see our Black people being shot down and killed. While you got the same situations with white people, and the police are disarming them, shooting them with rubber bullets, but they're killing our people. They're killing them. That's the whole thing.
They live in a different world, man. They live.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. They shouldn't. Hey, those Republicans should not even be on the ballot. And what I'm saying is this: we're gonna get them off the ballot. Everybody vote against them, and vote for, our Democratic ticket, and vote for them, because see, these are the people, and I don't care what you say, these are the people that want to hold us back, that want to share the money amongst themselves. We just want our people to have a decent life, a good wage of living, and be able to get housing, be able to get help when they need it, because hey, you never know when you need help, you know. And my whole being in this, you know, is that we can start to move forward. This is a country, and African Americans have great ideas. Minorities have great ideas, great things, great work ethic. And I don't care, you know, they say, well, okay, you know, we're Christians, and Republicans don't believe that nobody can be Christians but them. I'm more Christian than you because I'm white. But no, that's not it. You know, it's to believe in God, you know, okay, then and his order. So therefore, you know, anytime that they talk about pro-life, oh, we don't like abortion, but okay, you don't like abortion and you don't want people getting abortions, but you don't say nothing about the police killing our black people. You don't say nothing. You know, you pro-life. If you pro-life, you got to be pro-life all the way around.
Well, religious fanatics are no religion has a hold on all the religious fanatics. You know, they can be in any religion. You know, we look at some religions and say, oh, they're religious fanatics. We have religious fanatics here. You know, you could call yourself Christian, but you support Trump and support the things that he's done to people. You know,
how?
Separating kids, you know, taking kids from their parents. You support that? I mean, come on. And that's just one of the a lot of different things that he's done. So
the Georgia vote has the Georgia
have religious fanatics here. Yeah. So
okay, but the Georgia vote has to even up the field. It has to even up the field and give us an advantage.
Yeah.
We seen what the Republicans have done to us. That's it. We've seen what they've done to us.
One thing I think is important to keep in mind is they're just not doing it to black people. They're doing it to everybody.
Well, I understand.
You don't have any money. You know, if you don't have any money, they do it to everybody. A lot of people think they're just doing it to black people, but they're doing it to everybody.
It's not racism. I told you the whole concept is not racism. It's elitism.
Yeah, right. It's you know, it's the system. You know, it's capitalism. You know, hasn't changed. You know, and in a lot of systems, a lot of political and economic systems, they have to be updated, man. You got to tweak them. You know, I mean, because, you know, our Constitution was written, there were no computers. You know, there were these things that we have now didn't exist then. So you have to kind of update, you know, you have to update the laws and you have to kind of update the system, you know. It's just like capitalism. Nobody foresaw surveillance capitalism back then, where they would take people's information and monetize it and sell it and use it to manipulate people. Nobody could foresee that, you know, and that's a big problem now, you know. And that's why everybody's mad at, you know, Facebook, you know, but Facebook is only doing what JP Morgan did back in the 1920s. They're doing it in the 2020s. It's just a different way, you know, like as I was saying, the game don't change, it just get a little cleaner. Back then it was railroads and steel, you know, now it's information, you know.
Bricks and mortar.
Yeah, bricks and mortar. So
information
when you broke up companies back then from, you had a company that was a conglomerate and you broke it up when it was too big. Well, you could break Facebook up now, but you just have a bunch of smaller Facebooks. So I think the way you have to deal with it takes a modern approach, I think, to deal with it. And you can't deal with it the same way you broke up monopolies 100 years ago.
Well, they're going to do the same thing that Rockefeller did, because Rockefeller just took all his people and put them in business and you know, Mobil Oil and Texaco. And
my first credit card was a Standard Oil, a Ohio credit card. And on the back of that card, you could use it at like 40 different stations. You could use it at Mobil, BP,
right.
Exxon, Sunoco. And I said, well, how can you use this? Well, say Rockefeller owns all of them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Oh, Standard Oil. They broke up, but they didn't really break up, you know? Yeah, but I think
that's the same thing Facebook and them gonna do. That's the same thing. Yeah. Because see, this is the thing. They still have the technology, right? They have the technology. They can't bring nobody in that don't know, that, you know, that does not know the technology. It has to come from within. So it'd be like, hey, Vera, I need for you to take care of this company. You do the what's up. Okay, you take care of that. You know, I'm gonna be your partner. I'm gonna put the money involved in it and stuff. And all you got to do is run it. I'm behind the scene. You own it. You got all you got is 51%, and you the owner. You the majority owner. You know, that's the way it's gonna go down.
Yeah. But I think, one thing I'm glad to see is that, Georgians and people outside of Georgia, and I think, one of the reasons you see so much money going to these contests, because people realize that they affect more than just the state that they're in. And I'm pleased that, there are a lot of steps being taken to see to it that people can have their votes counted. With Stacey Abrams, I don't know how many more accolades she could get, but
Man,
she's
she
done.
has.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
She's
done.
done a hell of a job.
Yeah,
She's done a
I
hell
mean,
of a
she's
job,
registered.
man.
I think now there's 70,000 new registered voters for this new election from the election in November. So 70,000, 29,000 or 44% of Democrats, 41% of Republicans, and 10,000 or 15% are independents. So you can see once again, the independents kind of can swing the election. So it depends on, which way the independents go.
Your vote matters.
Yeah. And most of the people registered will be between the ages of 18 and 29. So what you're getting is a lot of younger people coming to the party. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. 1.7 million votes have already been cast, which is a record. At this point in the general election, there weren't that many votes, nearly that many votes cast already. So I think, what they're doing is in spite of the voter suppression efforts, they're finding ways to get people to vote, and which is pretty interesting, because there are about 7.5 million voters in Georgia. And I think probably over 3 million have requested absentee ballots, which is another record. So, here again, it's good to see that, things looks more people are voting, not just more Democrats, more Republicans, and more independents. So more people are getting involved. And I think that's a good thing when people get involved, because when enough people get involved, that means you can't win a contest with 20% of the population that likes you. And that's what happens in a lot of contests. 20 to 25% of the people kind of decide who gets elected. So I'm pleased.
They're banking on past performance because in Georgia, with all the runoffs that they have, the Republicans have always come out on top. Most of the time, most of all the time. But this time is very important that the Democrats, both of them, come out on top. I don't care what you think about them or whatever. This is important. They're going to do the job. When it comes down to taking care of us and taking care of our country, everybody. So call everybody, tell everybody, write them, do what you put them on Facebook. All you got to do is put down, say, hey, Georgians, go vote.
If you got some money like Verl, write a check.
Yeah, write a check, get in, make some phone calls.
It's time for a reset in this country, and Georgia is definitely at the front and has the ability now to help make that happen. Yeah. And history proves that anytime we show up, we will influence the outcome.
Oh yeah.
So independents, Democrats, progressive Republicans, vote Democrat on this ticket, and let's make some change.
Yeah.
Make some change.
Yeah. It's about time. I think the last time this happened was back in the 1920s when you had the Socialist Party and the Communist Party. And what came out of that were the unions.
Right.
And people say, well, I hate socialists and I hate communists, but you love unions. What I'm saying? You love Social Security. That's something else that came out of it,
Oh, yeah.
New Deal, when they put 15 million people to work, rebuilding this country. We need a new deal now, to rebuild our infrastructure. So I think, Georgia election is going to be, win, lose, or draw. I think they'll look back at this one and say, wow, what could we have done differently? People are waking up. People are waking up because it's like a sea change, man. It's all around the world. The wealth is being so concentrated that you have people like this guy in India, man. I forget his name. He built $100 million skyscraper. It's like a skyscraper, but it's his house in the middle of the hood.
Interesting.
He built $100 million skyscraper. And see, when you put it in people's face, when they see that, man, it's like, wow, you know, it's like people don't have enough to eat. And then you have, you know, you see, I saw in the news where, you know, people were saying, well, was it fair that Rudy Gobert got $210 million and Anthony Davis only got 195? And I'm saying,
Yeah.
you guys got to have more to do. Got to have more to do with your lives, you know, really, you know. So, you know, I think, you know, where it's all going is, you know, it's people want more equality, and it's not, you know, it's everybody, man. It's not, you know, people, they always want to frame it as a black white thing or a Mexican black white thing, you know,
But it is.
Hispanic thing.
But it is.
That's
It
because
is.
that's the way they frame it, but really it's the have and have nots.
Well, we know that too. But
It's the have and have nots. I think Oprah's got more in common with Bill Gates than she does with either one of us.
Yeah, she's definitely in the club.
You know, and it's about the have and the have nots, you know, and
But you know, I understand what Mike is saying, because in a race-based society, I remember Oprah sued some big company. She was over in Paris or somewhere trying to get in the store to do some shopping. They didn't know it was Oprah. They just saw a black face, wouldn't let her in.
wouldn't let her in.
She
Yeah,
turn around, make a phone call, and buy the company. You know,
yeah. But
so it's always going to be a factor. You know.
yeah, it's always going to be a factor. Yeah,
But it wasn't always like that. You know.
right,
But
right.
you know, it has become like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, once again, you know, we thank you. We appreciate your time. Our time is up, as we always say, but we certainly appreciate and thank you for yours. And I think our next show next week, we're going to look at this race again and kind of see how things are shaking out, see where we're at, look at the vote totals, because I think it's important that we, you know, kind of spread the news as best we can about what's going on, and you know, if it looks like people are getting involved at the same level or greater level than they did for the November election. So I think it's important that we cover, you know, community engagement. Mike, you got any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just everybody, just go out and vote. And the early voting now, and election day is January 5th for the runoff election. But you don't have to wait that long. You can vote now, get it out the way, and let's get counted. And understand that your vote does count, and you can see that it counts.
All right, Burl.
Yeah. If I could just echo that, yeah, definitely we got to make this happen. You've got to sit down with people and over dinner or coffee or whatever the case might be, and talk about the importance of voting. You know, we've got to get in a whole different mindset than we have been, because if we don't do something, things will just remain the same or possibly get worse.
Yeah, they'll get worse. Yeah, yeah. That's what Michelle Obama said. She said, "Remember when
Right.
you're getting vote for Hillary and you didn't think things could get worse?" She said, "Well, what do you think now?" You know. All right. Well, hey, thanks again, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Take care. Vote. Get involved.